I'm in love with your body.
Well, I've seen when you go on from Ireland's fish, to wash it, you have just about, I don't know, you know, it's just so ridiculous, the washing instructions. So,
oh, it's only 2:16. Oh, I'm freaking out because my clock says 2:40.
Does it?
Sorry, yeah. Does anyone have any deodorant? I can relax now. Come on, be my baby, come on, be my baby, come on, be my baby, come on. President. Yes.
Interesting. This is one of those nice tractors, like a house and grey and all that. It's got one of those, you know, how I gave it. I've seen two tractors together.
Cat Club presents. Oh yeah, it is that one. Come on, be my baby. Come on, be my baby. Come on. Hey. Some more handsome and good-looking people. Oh, we have a male. 2 males. Two viewers. Interesting. Why is this acting funny?
Yes, exactly.
Why can't I get this to stream? Stream! Diversity where facts don't care about your feelings.
And because it's short, it's really good. Yes, so we're going
Flume. All right, we've got internet. We are live, and the phone is upside down. Why? Fix that. That's what my ex-girlfriend used to tell me. No, I'm kidding. Hey, Catherine's watching. How cool is that? Fingers crossed that doesn't move. See how we go. I can't see any comments. Sorry. All right, we're live. We are live, and that doesn't want to work. This is live. Let's see if this is still playing. Huh? What happened? Is it still working? Can't tell. Yeah, it is. It's working. Come on, be my baby. Come on, come on. All right. Hi. Sorry. Yeah. Hello, Melissa. Okay. I did ask Wendy to remind me. I said, Seven. All right. Is everyone here? Are they? Oh, okay. You say that with great joy. Oh, really? It's not how you proposed, was it? No. Sorry. Thank you. Let's hope it stays that way. Just almost there. 2:26. Awesome. Still got 3.5 minutes. Sorry. Really? It's like, oh really? All right. You'll be able to see him when he speaks. You can go to YouTube as well. I think I'm live on there. Two different angles. Whatever you prefer, whatever you guys want.
So what the plan is just to let you know, we're going to go from 2:30 to about 3:15 on the autism, and then maybe have 15 minutes of question time. Then we're going to have about a 10-minute break, and then we'll start again about 3:40 on the language of Jesus, and that'll go till about 4:45. Sorry, 4:30, and some question time. We need to be able to end by 5 o'clock. So we probably won't stick to that, but we'll try. Thank you.
Wendy knows me too well. Hi, Gabriel. We won't stick to that. Anyway, looks like we got the projector working, but not the computer, but who cares? All right. So we have New and Marine. I actually don't remember your original name. Fiona New and Maureen and Leonie. And that told me starts with P, Pearl, P, something P. Pauline, sorry. And Monique, Gail, Faye, Ron. Okay, I know you guys, I know you. And we have Chevy, which is a combination of Sharon and Debbie. All right, good. We got everyone. Alrighty. So does anyone, apart from those who were here last time, does anyone else actually even know why they were here, or were they just threatened? Is that how it worked? Or? Yeah, hello people, you will be there, won't you? I know where you live. All right, great. So I want to say a massive thank you to those who came again to see some almost middle-aged guy talk about something for some reason. I like that was funny. That's a compliment. All right. Now, what can I tell you since last time? Since last time, I was just saying we had 18 followers online. That's gone to 330 in the last month, and we've had 35,000 views of the videos. For the book, we've raised now $1,900, including 600 from Gabriel, who was me. So it sounds bigger than it is, but still. And what else? YouTube's gone up through the roof. Facebook. Now there's 300 and something followers. You know, the podcast been downloaded 280 times. So obviously it's nothing compared to anything else, but compared to a month ago, it's been amazing. So it's great to have you back. And for those who are new, maybe I'll say that at the next speech to you. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to start from the end and then go back to the beginning. So the end was the diagnosis of severe autism and savantism, and the question is, why does that matter? What does it mean, and who really cares? And I began to test myself, and I have been doing that since then, in 2014 till today, and that's where we are. So how did it all start? Well, I thought instead of a prayer, we'd start off with a reading from the book, and it is called, I won't tell you because it has someone's name in there. All right. With Jonathan, on his way to be a school captain, a new chance for a friend came when Dean's time at Northeast was to begin. The guy that stuck with me in primary school was here to save my life. He would prove to them all that I was a good guy. And it was the 5th day when he called me at home to say he could no longer be my friend in public, as his new friends did not like me. Horrified and needing more than anything to be ripped away from this body, it was time to transfer this pain to others. A show once had an audience laugh where a handshake zapped a man. And I was sure that if I replicated this with thumbtacks attached to my hands when I shook other people's hands, there would be newfound laughter and friends to follow. As you guys have probably predicted, Unfortunately, the pain did not leave, but only created more in others. This book, the subtitle is The Tragedy of the Retarded Genius, and you can probably hear the tragedy coming up as I'm speaking. The school was a place to move from group to group, mimicking the characteristics of kids within each one of those groups. And there's a reason for that. This will make sense. Recording how many days it would take before I was shoved aside. There was much to learn with a glimmer of hope, but I would ultimately prevail, as nights and weekends would see rage pumping through me on the most beautiful of days, leaving me to scream muffled obscenities into pillows. I don't know if that really makes any sense to anyone. The next part gets a bit violent, so I might stop there. Why are we all here? Well, does anyone actually know from the last speech what was the most interesting part to them or what they found? No? All right, that's a great sign. All right, so Wendy asked me to speak last time, and I really appreciate that. What you are seeing standing before you is someone who has been able to memorize human behavior over many years of trials and errors, recorded in this great 150-page document, which is sort of hilarious at the same time as tragic. And so why do we speak about it? Hopefully, some of the truth that I have gone through can be shared with some of you and perhaps your children and other people around. All right. Now, I actually am more nervous on my second speech than my first for some reason. So I wanted to talk to you first about what is going on. Okay, first of all, I am no doctor, but an autist. An autist. What is different with me as opposed to other autists? That is my ability to stand here and make eye contact and notice that one person has twiddle in their thumbs while another person waves and wears glasses and has blue hats and covers their hair, maybe to hide their face because they're shy, but that could be because they're an adolescent. At the same time, we have someone who brought their mother. Why is that of any interest? I don't know, but this is what my brain does, and it counts how many empty seats there are to people who are here. And it also allows me to stand here and remember to make eye contact and clasp my hands together, as well as put them on their sides, which is, I'm mimicking people's body language in the audience. Why is that important? I don't know. Is it really important? I'm not really sure. So the point is that I have a unique part of autism, but before I get to that, I'll explain what it might actually is, what it might be. Now, people call it a developmental disorder, a delayed developmental disorder. So you're sort of like a child, unlike me, who's a grown man. Okay. All right. And there tends to be a discrepancy. You can talk all you like, don't worry. There tends to be a discrepancy between the distribution of the function in the brain, and it's not even when it comes to the autist. And what I mean by that is that one part of their brain tends to be much more developed than another part. All right. So in the most cases, when you see an autist operate outside of his domain, right, they will look to you like they're a bit stupid or egocentric or retarded, to use a politically correct term, or perhaps not understanding or think they're smarter than you, or anything that does not seem to fit in normal, what you would call neurotypical behavior. In my case, the slow part of my brain is quite clever, and the extremely prodigious part of the brain is almost immeasurable on the IQ scale. And that has allowed me to do certain things like, as some people know already, learn Italian and French in 40 hours. I was actually learning French, but Italian was in the room behind me, so I was able to learn both. And then, of course, become a teacher at the same school and was teaching the class that I was in. What happens to the class? Of course, the class then thought that he must have known French and Italian earlier. Something similar has happened in Syriac, which we know now. The people that are in my class, I now teach, and I will. And this is my teacher here, who's now a student with me, which is obviously way ahead. All right. What I wanted to say about the autism, and I've said this before, it's the inability to abstract across equivalence classes. So what that means is that if there's a rule, like there's a rule that applies at your home, when you sit down, make sure you sit and make eye contact and put your hands like this and don't yawn in public, or don't yawn in front of other people, or if you do, look down so that no one can see you, or try not to. All of these things that humans do, or whether, you know, how many times they scratch their nose or their ear, or put their hair behind their ear or in front, or fold their arms, or blink rate, all of these type of things. Those things are very difficult to transition to other places. So, for example, maybe your son or daughter is brilliant at home and then steps into a room like this and then just has no idea what to do. Right? maybe they just look at the ground, or you know, eat something out of their girlfriend's hand, or you don't know. It could be anything like that, right? All right, and you might think they're being rude or egocentric, and that's actually not what's going on in most cases. What's going on is that they have the part of their brain that can analogize a rule into a different room actually does not exist. So the rules need to be retaught for every single situation. Now, the reason today that I'm having a bit of a struggle is that I've never given a speech with an audience that is around me by 180 degrees. So I'm not actually sure how to turn my head and make eye contact. And I've noticed that I've made more eye contact with Sharon and with Ron and with Wendy, and sometimes Jan. And I try not to do that because I don't want to give, my brain is like, don't look at a female too much if her husband is there, because then they might get the wrong impression. And basically, that's what the brain is constantly doing. Now, there are 8 people in Australia that we know of that have autism on an AQ scale of 220 above 191, 191 or higher. I was one of those, and there's only one who can socially function. Guess who? So, unfortunately, yes, if you didn't guess, yes. So it's the form was a bit incorrect. Actually, it said above the age of 4. It's social age of 4. It's not the social age of 11. So none of them are above social age of 11 except me, who's probably 11 and a half. I'm just kidding about this. All right. So the basic story is, just to give you a quick rundown: born strange, no social skills, and without the ability to develop them. Ah, Jan, you made it. You were here on time. Sorry. Yes.
You said you're in about 11, but
yes.
Is there room to go further, or do you still have to train yourself to go further?
That's a brilliant question. I did a periscope on that a couple of weeks ago called the super self. And what the autist does, who has that ability to memorize the hundreds of thousands of rules required to function that neurotypicals subconsciously are aware of, what they do is they build up the rules in their memory and gradually build up their age. So what I can do, for example, is, yeah, I do really appreciate that. I will look into that later on. So, and then you can start to look like you're actually a lot older. And when you do that for too long, people then misjudge you as a neurotypical. And then when you make a stupid mistake, they think you are an a-hole or deliberately malicious or trying to do something wrong. And if anyone knows me, they know that's exactly the whole life, including up till today. And that will probably get worse as time moves on. No ability to develop them, tried and abused. That was the interesting part. This is an interesting situation because growing up in Australia, without much interaction with other humans, except for my family, as people know my father, oh my God, Jesus, come, I make you food for dinner, right? So this was the dad, lovely, sweethearted, beautiful man. And there's always a subset, maybe 1%, maybe 5%, and this is not to label anybody, but the Anglo-Australian culture, of course, can sometimes be perhaps not as welcoming as you'd like, and that is not to do with everyone. Every culture has a couple of a-holes, right? It's evenly distributed. We all have that in common as humans. Celebrate our humanity. I'm thinking everyone probably has an uncle like that or something. Anyway, yeah. So where was I? They made it difficult for me for being what you call Lebanese, mate. And then you'd also have the Lebanese Muslims. For example, from the age of 5, I had one throw me down the stairs for being a Christian. And then, of course, you have teachers who would say, and you know this before, and I hate going over it, but put your hand up if you think Gabriel's an idiot, which was the sort of the best example of a teacher saying that to me when I was 12. But they didn't know what they were doing, so I don't particularly blame him. He's just, you know, probably a double a-hole. I would still probably want to punch him in the face. I still feel like that, honestly. Yeah. So it was pretty good. It was called the triple abuse sandwich, or you can call it an Oreo hole if you like. These are the names that you come up with. Yeah, so it was a very good insight into understanding what it's like to be abused by everyone. And that's sort of a good thing because it cancels out your prejudice. Because instead of just hating one person, you hate everybody equally. So it works out all right. You realize that you don't really, you know, it's not one particular thing. It's evenly distributed amongst humans. So I spent most of my years growing up until year 11 at lunchtime in the toilets. And that is not a dirty joke, please. I really don't mean it that way. I just would stay away from people. The other thing is that the autistic brain picks up all of the senses constantly on what's going on, and it has an inability to block out all of the noise, and so it hears everything simultaneously, like the shifting of legs and the tossing of the hair and the adjusting of the body, and the brain is trying to focus on one particular thing, but that just doesn't happen too well. Of course, it gives you superpowers because it allows you to memorize everyone's body language and then try to copy it. All right. Yes, Monique. Yes. Yes.
Do you think that an autistic person can memorize all those social cues?
Good question. No, I don't think they could memorize it, but I still think they're subjected to the external stimuli. Yes. Yes.
To memorize, and you know, all our names to remember it, though, that's just amazing. But that's obviously not with autism, that's more the savant.
Correct. Yes, but having said that, if I wasn't autistic, then I might just have been a regular smart person. Whereas now I sort of have part of my brain that's sort of smart, part that's genius. So the average is still probably just a regular smart person, but it's shifted into one part of the brain. So the autism, I guess, has the autism plus a high intellect caused the savantism, possibly. I don't know, but yeah, good question. So that might be bad news. That means that there's no cure at this point, if that's the case. All right. So the book details the abuse that kept going until 25, which was my third and final suicide attempt, which would have been successful, but for my father finding my unconscious and bleeding body, which they were able to resuscitate, but not without me spending 2.5 days in a coma. From that, there was the original diagnosis and then the learning to function over 7 years. It started with, hello, how are you? And that was explained to me. That's when I first realized that there was a dimension to human behavior, which I had never seen. And I still don't see it, but I infer it. And so I don't really get embarrassed like regular humans because they seem to sense this social, what do you call it, this societal norm that needs to be adhered to. My brain doesn't really see that. So it's like I'm swimming, I'm pretending to swim in the water and I don't see the water. So everyone else is like this and I'm just going, all right, I'll do this as well with everybody, copying them. And what I mean by that is, hello, how are you? People are like, oh, good, thanks, how are you? Whereas, how are you to me made no sense. So I would never answer back until someone told me it means, how is your condition? So for example, I remember with my ex-fiance, she introduced me to her friends and someone said, how was your week? And I said, well, it was great. On Monday at 9 a.m. I went into work and at 9:30 this, and I was spending about 20 minutes and explaining how my week was. And of course, now I understand that there is an emotional overlay that the autistic cannot see. And I use mathematics to help me infer what's actually going on. So I know now if someone says, how are you? I have to lie by saying, good, thanks, how are you? But I understand that what I'm actually doing is conveying an emotional connection with that other human, sort of like when you hook up to the internet. You can't transmit data until you hook up to the internet. So that's what I'm doing. So hello, how are you? I'm connecting to the internet, connected. In other words, good, thanks, how are you? That in my brain, that's what I'm hearing. All right. So learning to function over 7 years allowed me to basically be a blind man who could fake seeing very well. In fact, so well that I was able to set up quite a huge company with many staff, and I actually thought I knew what I was doing. Clearly, that was not the case. And there was the collapse, and with the diagnosis of savantism, that's when I experienced 2 to 3 weeks of IQ tests, and their reactions, lack of blink rate and opening of jaws, which hit the floor metaphorically, not literally. That would have required surgery. Yes, so I've been the subject of quite a number of tests ever since. And there's basically, I thought it was all crap. It didn't really make sense. I thought, no, I'm sure I am retarded. There is something wrong. I'm not sure. But so I then went and studied those languages. I went and learned the Hebrew script in 90 minutes. And what's interesting is I went to an Israeli restaurant and I'm like, no, and I'm talking to him like that after a couple of weeks of learning. And he actually thought I was from Israel, which was pretty cool. And I did the same thing with, I went to Greece, and then after 2 days, I learned to read and write Greek, which I now teach on the internet. And What else? Yeah, Syriac, you know. Learning to fly a plane. I've got my pilot's. It was a 25-hour course. I finished in 4 hours, and the Russian guy's like, "I've never seen anyone fly like you." So yeah, so you start to this started to become a pattern. So then I thought, all right, well, as a joke, I'll go to uni. So I went to uni, and within 2 years, I finished the mathematics major, topped the uni, and they asked me to represent them at the nuclear science facility on Monday. So I'm getting free food, and that's all I, yeah, free non-radioactive food. So what is the point of all this? Well, Wendy thought there's clearly something to offer people, and that seems to be what's going on, especially as we see the explosions online. And yeah, look at that, we've got hearts coming everywhere, which is nice. Thank you for the hearts. And my point is that I have always seen value, especially after recovering from the suicide, to find meaning in life, in how can I help other people that would otherwise not have been as successful in life, especially mothers, which I think is part of the problem with autistic kids. And not understanding how they behave and interact and understand, and how to interact with them. They're two different languages. Basically, it's like like for example, in Greek, yachara means cheese, and in Arabic it means something really dirty. So it's the same thing, right? You say to your kid, "Go clean your room." The autistic child doesn't know what clean means. I learned that when I was 34, and I've done all this on YouTube and on Periscope. I talk about these for hours, explaining every single situation and how the autistic person interprets it. Excuse me. So for example, clean means nothing, because clean is a superset of, and it's an abstract term. What does clean mean? No, what it means to the regular human, which I only learned at 34, as I said, was place everything in categories which are organized so that they can be accessed by you in the future, given a blueprint, right? So that's what clean means. And now I've learned, so that's what it means. Because I used to vacuum my room, and then my dad would say, "But your room is still dirty. Why?" I'm like, "But I just vacuumed it," but all my clothes would be all over the floor, right? So, and then they would think I was being a smart aleck, right? So, and then they yell at you for being a smart aleck, and then you get upset because, "Why are you yelling at me? I did what you told me to. Go screw yourself, blah, blah, blah," right? And that's exactly how it happens in every single situation. There's another one. My dad was like, "How are you? How was your day? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Which question do I answer first?" And then after a few minutes, he's like, "Why don't you answer me?" And I said, "I'm trying to figure out which question to answer first. Why are you being a smart aleck to me?" And so, I mean, you probably have similar situations. Yes. Yes. Up until last year. Yeah. That's probably the most asked question. How did your parents not know, or whatever it was? It's a unique situation, and you'll notice in the book I give a bit of a background to my mother and father, which explains why my mother was so driven, and so therefore not really around as much growing up. And my father is a big-hearted man, and if you read the book, you will see, and that'll explain it in more detail. Sorry? No, I've got to get pre-orders so I can actually self-publish it, which is one of the reasons to give this speech, actually. All right, so what binds us across all of us as the autist? I've mentioned that briefly, but it's quite obvious. As soon as, for example, one person walked into the room, I could tell he was one of my brethren immediately. Lower functioning than me, but I could immediately tell he was one of the family. And people are mistaking this person as being rude or a smart aleck, but he's actually listening quite well. And in fact, every time he looks at the ground, he's actually concentrating even harder, but it looks like he's actually not concentrating on the speech at all. So these are things that you recognize as the autist. My ex-fiance once asked me to close my eyes and how many blinds were on the wall, and I told her 14. And she, what I had actually done, she taught me how to go back into my mind and look at the videos in my brain. And that's the savant part. So, and I did it, you can see it on the internet. I've got one, I don't know what it's called, like where I read a whole page and then I closed my eyes and just recited it. So there are things like that my brain can do. And it's not really me. Hello. Savant, it comes from the Latin word to know. And it's when you have an uneven distribution it's when you have a unique ability, but you're not actually that smart. So like not someone who's brilliant, normally brilliant, but someone who they could be even appearing to be retarded, but there's one particular thing that they have, sort of like, imagine if you're really skinny, but you have an arm with the strength of Superman. So this arm is sort of like that, and then the other one's like, you could punch a train. Something like that, yeah. And my ability is the short-term working memory, which is so far, in terms of, there's no known person in the world who has one greater. There's one person in the UK who's 2 years older than me, born on a Wednesday, January 29, and he has that ability. He memorized pi to 20,000 decimal places. And there's a guy in the US who got hit by a baseball at age 10, and you've probably seen this. And they flew him in a helicopter, and then he can draw the whole city and which window was closed. Yeah. So if that answers that question, yeah. All right. My grandfather taught me to count cards when I was 8, and then I beat him at 11. And yeah, I reckon that's where it probably comes from. He's been in Australia for 70, 60 years and still can't speak a word of English, but his Arabic is so advanced that even his own family don't understand him. Just probably why he's happier in the nursing home. No, just kidding, just kidding. All right, the second dimension of reality is what I've learned to infer. So I have learned to hear when someone says to me, I say, how are you? They go, good, thanks, as opposed to good, thanks. So I can hear the tone difference, and I attribute that mathematically to the second dimension. So it's like this. If you imagine that east and west is the logic axis, that's where the autist operates. North and south is like the emotional axis. So you could be good and slightly up, which means there's a slight emotional content, or you could be good the other way and there's like a negative emotional content. And so that's what I do. Someone once told me, they told me a pretty bad story about themselves. And my question was, okay, well, if that happened, then why did you walk around this corner and do this? And that actually upset them, which I didn't realize. So you learn these rules. Anyway, I've gone over that. Yes. Yes. Oh, I like your question, Monique. All right, so Monique is my dad would laugh because it's an Arabic swear word. So, yeah. So my dad would go, oh. Anyway, it's a combination of both. So I spent 7 years learning with this lady called Edith in the book. Obviously, that's not her real name, which I think you probably figured that out. And her training was that she was a brilliant, wise woman. She is the female equivalent of Gandalf from Lord of the Wings. Lord of the Wings. And anyway, yeah. Now, yes, combination of the two. It would not have come to me, irrespective of how supposedly brilliant that I am in some parts of my brain. It would never have come to me, but for it being explained to me. And the seed that was sown with the combination of the disastrous life that I had. So being in the Middle East and being kicked out of my family's place because they couldn't understand why I was the way I was. And then I hitchhiked for 4 months. I lost 20 kilos, became 69 kilos, living on the streets where I could find food. I started hitchhiking with people, and then I learned to memorize their behavior. So yeah, it's a combination of that. And that brings me to parenting, especially in the West, whereas children here, especially if they perhaps maybe deviate from the norm, being autistic, are coddled by their mothers. And that is because I think, I mean, my humble subjective opinion, that by definition, a mother would have to be in love with her child, otherwise they've thrown him out the freaking window, right? And of course, that has a detrimental effect when they transition from the age of 15, 16 to 25, when they're trying to become men, and nothing can shrink their male parts and reduce their testosterone more than a woman trying to tell them what to do. Right? That does not do very well. And so what happens is, of course, they regress, they become sort of more emasculated, they don't learn the difficulties of life and feel no need to stretch themselves further to gain the wisdom that can only be gained through the pain of experiencing these traumatic type of circumstances. Now, I'm not asking parents to throw their kids in the Middle East with no food, right? That's a bit of an extreme case, but somewhere in between perhaps would be the way to go. There is, yeah. Yes.
Like Jesus' father, Jesus was on earth. So the love that's portrayed in the Bible, you have an understanding of that concept without actually seeing them behave because they're spiritual.
I don't share your belief in a spirit, so I must apologize for that. But yes, that sort of answers the question, but in a sledgehammer type of way. Hello, how are you? All right, sorry. Have I missed anything? No. Yeah, that's about it, right? Yeah. So I've read part of the book. I've spoken to you about it, and it's now 3 o'clock. So the speech went 8 minutes longer than last time, probably, which is pretty good. Yes. The mapping. I don't remember. Oh, yes, sorry, yeah. It's always the most important thing that I forget. All right, so I came back from the first time we went to Lebanon, 1986. I was 5 years old, came back. My auntie asked me at the dinner table, what was the one thing, like the biggest thing that you learned? And I explained to her something that I won't repeat in public to do with the men's room. And she said, we don't say that at the dinner table. Now, what I then learned is that never to repeat that line at the dinner table. Which dinner table was specifically that dinner table, not a breakfast table, not a table that you have dinner at, and not any line that may deviate from that. So, for example, the next time I said it, and my mum said, I thought you weren't supposed to say that, I said, but that was at the dinner table, this is the breakfast table. So then, of course, you get called a smart aleck. Yeah, thank you. Oh yes, you have to go up supersets. That's right. Yes, so regular humans are able to go up sets. So it's not just dinner tables and breakfast tables, but it's all tables. Not just tables, but even if you're sitting down and eating with people and there's no table, that rule still applies. So these are all of the rules that my brain has had to learn to do. The biggest thing that made me want to learn them is why, right? And I think it's two things. One, I had a desire to communicate with people, and that might be to do with other traits like extroversion or openness or wanting to be around people, etc. And the other one was that I realized that I was going to have to learn the language of humans if I was going to be able to communicate with them. Oh, that's right. Yes. I've really botched up. Maybe you should come up and tell the story. I didn't realize that until 3 weeks before the first speech. That's right. So 2 months ago, we were having a chat about this because that was just after my ex-girlfriend had left me and I couldn't figure out why and all of this stuff. So went to a deep and meaningful, as people call it. And it got deep and very meaningful. Yeah. But he actually said to me when I told him that story, he said, why didn't you realize that you couldn't say that in front of people? And I thought, how do you get from dinner table to people, right? Like, how about when you're having dinner and there's no tables? How about if there's no people and you're having dinner? How about if there's people and there's no food or dinner or tables, right? But somehow that rule, so it's called the superset and the subset. Yes, if you explain, for example, a couple of months ago, a friend of mine asked her child, who's 2 years old or 3 years old, to go and get the red and black shoes. Now he got every single pair of shoes except for the one she wanted. And when she said why, he said, well, you didn't ask for the ones with the white laces on top. Now she thought he was being rude and actually yelled at him. And I told her you have to be very specific and explain not only the white laces, but how they're crossed into the shoes and where they're located and what size they are and stuff like that. Yeah. Yes.
You want me to put my shoes on and then my socks?
Yeah.
So I said, come put your shoes and socks on.
Yeah.
So I've got to be very careful saying,
yes.
Socks and shoes on.
Yes.
And put it in order. You know, I'll put the undies and the shorts on. And,
okay.
You know, I've got to put it in the order that would go on because he just stand there thinking, how am I going to put rubber shoes on and then socks? Yeah. And look at me like
you've got to keep your shoes warm.
We taught our son about the quotation like a figure of speech.
Yep.
So he found it very hard to
yes.
get those pun things.
Yes.
They were really overwhelming for him.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one person would say one little thing that
yeah.
he just didn't get.
Yeah.
And as he's got older now. So now he's just kind of calming himself and take it as a joke and give him a really funny smile that he's not really getting,
Yeah.
and then push it on.
Yeah, regular humans look really stupid to us, and like I know that we look really stupid, but like for example, to us it sort of looks like humans are doing this. I'm like, why are you doing that? Just do that. Oh, okay, I'll do it too. And we just stand around doing this. Yeah, it's sort of like that. Yeah, it's a very good. Maureen, you wanted to say something? Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, what did you actually mean about the mother and the mother and the autistic child? Like, are you saying that there's too much smothering? Yes. Is it?
Yes.
So what would you suggest that the mothers do?
Well, I mean, it's hard because I can never understand that, but I would say get out of the way. And you know, that's probably, from experience, that sounds harsh to neurotypicals. But what I say is that, yes, you save, if you stay in their way, it makes you feel better temporarily, but in the long term, you will suffer very badly. Because, for example, my brother, I had to force him to interact with people at age 27, and that was a disaster. And the amount of fights that I had with him. So, you know, someone would say to him, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And if they weren't there in 5 minutes, he would get so unbelievably angry. And these were things that I had learned 10 years before, right? Because of what happened to me overseas and stuff. A quick example would be that, let's say that the mother brings food and puts it in the freezer, or bread. And then when they need bread, the mother goes and gets more bread for the house. Now that stops the autistic, especially the male, from having to go out and get bread when they're starving and then have to interact with people. And so the autistic needs to interact with people 10 times as much. And so that actually makes it infinitely worse when they're staying at home and they feel like they're okay. They have to realize that they are very rare and that everyone else is to them an idiot. And they have to and I say that with love because it's not true. It just looks like that, right? And so I say they have to experience it firsthand because they will never ever listen vicariously. It has to be empirical knowledge, especially for the autists. Their minds tend to be much more rigid, and so you can't tell them a certain thing. You have to say, well, if you're hungry, go get it. Right? Basically, yeah. Which is a hard thing. I have not seen a mother being able to do that yet. So I'm inferring that it must be difficult. Yeah. Yeah, I had a teacher ask me once if he could read the book I was reading, and he was where you are and I was here, and I thought, wow, he must have amazing vision. So I said to him, sure, if you can see that far. Yeah. Also in the book. So yeah, Mr. Bambury, and I was 13 in year 8. So the whole class thought, man, he's awesome. And I'm like, all right. I didn't know why, like what was going on. So I got in trouble a lot. In fact, towards the end of school, the teachers, I would walk in the door and they'd say, get out. So it was, yeah, all the time. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and I think it made some teachers, I remember looking back, said, you're so unbelievably gifted. Why can't you focus, or you're in trouble, or why do you smile at me when I look at you? And honestly, I didn't even know I was smiling. So I learned what smiling meant when I was in year 11, because one teacher said it, and I felt my muscles curve up to 45 degrees every time he looked at me. So I would deliberately try and get his eye contact so I could memorize that muscle movement and know that that's a smile. And now it's easy. So, yeah. Yes. Why? Well, I can only answer on behalf of this professor called Steve Silberman, I think his name is. He wrote a book called Neurotribes. His hypothesis is that autism was always there, but it was hidden because people didn't talk about it very much. So I would not have come up with someone with autism because they didn't even know what it was. They might have just been put into homes. My auntie, was put in a home since the age of 1 or 2 years of age. And she's got savantism as well, but she's actually very, very, very disabled. Probably, yeah. Yeah, probably, yeah. So. Bad kid, yeah, or retarded, or hello. You're asking a question on behalf of your boyfriend because he's too shy to ask. Yes. Okay. That means you love him.
How old were you when your parents noticed that you had autism?
My parents never noticed.
Now?
No.
Yeah.
No, my mum's pretty devastated now because it was after the diagnosis. So I was 33, January 2014. I was 32 and 11 months. And when I got the diagnosis, that's when my mum sort of went back into her whole life and started wondering, how could I not see it? It's so obvious. Sorry? She suffered a lot of guilt, and I have to tell her that it's not her fault because... Correct. Yeah. Yes, after the suicide, I then received the cocktail of the party meds, what do you call them, the party issues. You know, we got the Tourette's, woohoo, and the OCD, and the depression and the anxiety, and the whole cocktail and salad. That was pretty good. And the guy said he might have Asperger's, but I'm not sure. That's what the first guy said. But I called the first doctor, Dr. Visa or MasterCard. That's how I remember him. Yeah, that was the one thing I remember at the end. Yeah. I hated him. Anyway, yeah, so I went to China for a week and came back and was talking to him in Mandarin. And then he said, I don't speak Mandarin, I speak Cantonese. So then I remembered his accent in English. And then from now on, whenever I hear a Chinese person speaking English, I can tell if they're Cantonese or Mandarin. So they was like, oh, how do you know the difference? I'm like, I have a friend who's Chinese. You know, you can't tell them the real. So yesterday on my scope, right, I walked into the Vietnamese and I'm like, Xin chào, come on. They're like, oh, you know Vietnamese, you're very lucky. You know? And yeah. So I said, how do you know? And I'm like, oh, you know, I went to Vietnam for a bit, and you know, you can't tell them. By the way, I'm a super genius, and I can memorize a language in 3 seconds. You know, no, yeah. Yes. I think I hear what everyone else hears because I took a hearing test as well, and my hearing is just like what you would expect from a healthy male. But I think it's in the brain, because what I've noticed is that when I do a lot of online periscopes, as you guys know, when you hear back the periscope, people can hear all the sounds that I can hear live. And I've heard that it's the same thing with people who get hearing aids. When they get hearing aids initially, if they're in a crowded place, they can hear the music and the chat and everything, all of it. Does anyone have that experience? Yeah. So I think it's in the brain, yeah. Hello, Jan. Yes. That's okay. Early Jan, I'll remember you now. Yes. Who? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Boy who felt earth. I think by saying who, I've answered that question. Because I don't know who. But that would be cool, yeah. I'm happy to meet with whomever. Oh, yeah, that's right. I got interviewed for ABC thanks to one of our friends here. And I'm actually part of a new documentary which hasn't come out yet on autism on ABC, but this time it's TV. They thought my face was for radio, then they changed their mind. Oh, a comedian. So my ex-fiance taught me what humor was. So I spent a week in 2007 in front of YouTube and memorized 18 hours a day of comedy, and then learned how to be funny. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You just saw it. All right. Cool. Well, that's it. If you like, you can always go to YouTube, Gabsmacked, and then you can see a reading from the book. I actually do a bit more of the reading of the bullying and stuff. And it's a bit tragic, but it's also fun. And you can always pre-order one if you like. Otherwise, I'll just pre-order my own as I keep driving buses. Yep.
When your book comes out, will it go on iTunes?
I would like for that to be the case, yes. I'm probably going to do an audiobook afterwards as well. Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got to get 250 more, and I'm getting like 1 or 2 a day at the moment. So within the next 6 months, I should have enough and I'm giving everyone signed copies. But so far, it's been US people, I think. and a couple in Canada. So hopefully iTunes. Yeah. Absolutely. I brought some papers. This is the entrepreneur side of me. Yes. All right. Well, it's up to you. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So I could play piano before I could speak. I couldn't speak till about age 3, but when I spoke, I was fluent in 2 languages. But up from the age of 18 months, my mother got a keyboard which was color-coded with a book that had notes. And she knows that at 18 months, I was reading the thing and starting to play the piano. She thought, oh, okay, he has a gift. That's nice. So I kept playing, and then we met this gentleman, thanks to our beloved priest who's passed away. And this is all in the book, of course. And he, I say that because so I don't have to tell you the whole story. If you want the whole story, it's available. I couldn't, because facial expressions and visual cues for me are not very good, right? So, but my hearing and ability to retain information through my ears is what you'd call superhuman, I guess. So what he would do is play them on cassette tape. Yes, back in the day, cassette tape. And I would hear them and play them. And I was able to go to the Conservatory of Music, and by age 10 scored a perfect score without being able to read and top the state in classical piano. So is that what you wanted to say? Yeah. So these are the little things my brain can do. So like, for example, I remember I was in Italian class and the guy was perfetto accento, like perfect accent. I was like, yeah. And then other people were like, why? And then, do you play the piano? Or it's like people coming up with different reasons. And they're like, oh yeah, he plays the piano, so he knows Italian words. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember one woman said to me, one woman said, you don't look Lebanese. Were you born in Australia? I said, yeah. She goes, oh, that's why. It's amazing, you know, the excuses you hear for things, yeah. Good question. My memory, I can access, in fact, I did that on my scope, and I played a piece that I hadn't played in 4 or 5 years, and I sat down and played it, and I played it about 95% as well, but my hands obviously were not as flexible. But the memory of the thing, yeah, was perfect, because what I do when I sit there, my memory, I don't know how regular humans work, but I've noticed that when people remember, they try to do this or look or, you know, something. I don't do that. I just think of it, and then a projector screen appears in front of me, and I'm just copying it. So it's not really me. It's like there's a computer chip by a spirit or God or whatever we want to believe in that does that. So yeah. Why I was gifted or cursed with that, I don't know. Well, there's not that many of them, but there was one gentleman who was basically almost not functioning. And after 6 months, he was able to go back to uni and walk down the street and say hello to people and stuff. So basically, I taught him the language of humans. And I can pick them as soon as I see them. Like there was one kid who was 2 years old. I walked in the house, I'm like, he's one of my crew, man. Yeah, yeah. Because they're like me when no one's around. Yeah, so I know all of my movements, that like my brain is like doing that deliberately, and I can see when people smile and nod their head, which means that they might have a son or someone who's, they see in them what I'm saying. I mean, this is what my brain is trying to do constantly. And I know that those movements are, see, normally I'd sort of be like that and not look at anyone. Or, yes, sorry. Yes. Sure. Yes, yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. Monique. Monique is now my new speech director. Yeah, you become an expert. Very good question. In fact, there's a whole chapter of this, guess where, in my book. Yes, so I lacked the ability to tell the difference between the past and the present up until my first antipsychotic medication when I was in my early 20s. And that was called Zyprexa, which was a test drug at the time, but it made me put on a lot of weight. I was like 25 kilos heavier at the time. That allowed me to tell the difference between the past and the present. It allowed me to recognize that some of my memories were further distant than others. And that helped me to forgive. Because before that, I could never forgive anyone for anything. Because I'm like, 16 years ago, on the Wednesday, you said this, right? Yeah, yeah. And people would always say, get over it. It's in the past. I'm like, what does that even mean? That's like saying, get over that chair. It's to your left. Yeah, yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. He has to deal with them. They have to be explained in a logical fashion, which neurotypicals can't really do at this point. I feel like maybe that's what I have to do, which is teach neurotypicals, like I'm doing on my podcasts, how we think so that you can then use your brilliant neurotypical brains to connect with them. Maybe that might be what we have to do. Okay, so I'm off that one. But without that, I would not have been able to do the therapy to transform my personality to be able to talk with everyone. So in a way, it's better, and in a way, it's worse. It's worse because now I'm getting prosecuted for something I did not even think was possible that a human could do, because my behavior is still completely odd, but yet I look neurotypical. And so the only way to compensate for that in people's brain is he must be evil or something.
And people are looking at you sideways.
Yeah.
They won't treat that as a disability. They'll treat that as a complete social reject.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing there like a wheelchair or a...
Correct, to compensate.
Well, I'm disabled and I'm struggling.
Just tell him it was a fly.
Do you want to take a photo?
Yeah, that's actually brilliant, Monique. That was awesome. Hello, Jan. Yes. Not happy, Jan. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. So I ran down a transvestite when I was on my Vespa, right? And this person was on drugs or something, right? And my bike hit them over. Now I stood up, and the person is saying to me, sorry, as I'm running them down, right? And I'm sorry, right? And so she gets up, and I stood up, and the police came, and the police yelled at me and said, you don't care, because I don't have the facial expressions. You don't care. And I got really pissed off. And so for the first time, I said to him, I care more than you do. Anyway, I didn't get arrested, but yes. So they have zero clue, right? People have zero understanding. Yes. 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 Well, the regular humans confuse autistics with egocentric narcissistic sociopaths, which are actually the reverse, the mirror image of an autistic person. I did a scope on that a few days ago. And it's not that they are egocentric. And I've spoken about this, and I've written about this on my Facebook page. Sorry, hey man, it's free steak knives. Sorry, I don't mean it that way. This is all I do, right? I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Mirror image, thank you. Yes, sorry. That's why I carry bum bags. These are my short-term memory with me right here. Sociopath. Yes, egocentricity, yes, sorry. The autistic is actually not aware of the egos of other people to actually be egocentric. So they are just they are interacting within the world that they think exists. Whereas the narcissistic is aware of everyone, just doesn't give a damn. That's completely different, but they look exactly the same from the outside. Yeah, because for example, as the autist, and I see a counselor every 2 weeks, been doing that for years, because an apple is good when you're healthy, not when you're sick, right? And one of the first things I said to my first counselor was, I don't feel like I'm here. I feel like the whole world is a computer game, and I am inside this giant person controlling things. Yes, like there's like I'm inside a submarine looking out into the world. And she said that's how autistics tend to feel. Yeah. Yes. Wow, you won the jackpot. Yeah. 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 Okay.
So do you think that as an adult they'll be able to talk about that to other people? Because you've talked about past relationships. I think you mentioned a few on saying, like as a mother, I want them to go on and just be really productive members of society and members of the community. And with that as a mother, I want them to get married and have girlfriends and do all those things.
Yes.
And I think that there's going to come a point in their life where they may, do you think they'll come close enough to someone that they would say, well, no, I'm autistic.
Yeah.
Was there a point? I did find that easy. Obviously, you find it easy to talk about if you're doing that with us now. You won't look on YouTube doing it.
Yeah.
Was there a time when it was very hard and you didn't want anyone to know?
Well, I didn't know I had it. And I would go to school and I got to a point where I would tell the other students that I was an idiot in advance so that they wouldn't tell me first. Yeah. So coming from that to here, it's easy. Knowing you now, you have a lot in common, only from the little bit that I can see, with my mother's sister, who is also extremely bright and very strong personality. And that makes it very hard for an autistic boy, especially if their mother is extremely strong and extremely loves them so much that they want the best for them. And it's the worst possible situation. Yeah.
Very autistic.
Sorry. Yeah, I forgot. All right. Sorry. No worries. So my auntie would tell me for years and years, and she wouldn't listen to me until the end. I said, you have to kick him out of the house. And I'm not saying do that, but it got to that point where I said, you have to kick him out of the house, because he was also a child genius. And she kicked him out of the house because she had no other choice after years of not listening to me. And after 6 months, he having to go through hell and finding out where to sleep and meeting girls, then he was able to find the strength within himself to be able to come out of the closet and be able to come back home and work with who he is. Yeah. Without that, a guy has to, like, it's like the forest needs a bushfire for the seeds to germinate. That has to happen. And I think that's why, without strong fathers who can rip them away from the mother and not literally, but, smack around the head metaphorically and say, go out and get a freaking job. And if you starve, I don't care, yeah. Yeah. He's doing really well, by the way. He's lucky he's got an awesome girl with him. She's awesome. She loves him a lot. The fact that you took the question, you said, I wanted to ask it. That was, I really like that. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yes, I can tell that. Yes. Yes. Yep, that's fine. Yep. Yep.
How can we help yourself like we don't have to say get out?
Yeah.
There we go.
That's why I say it's hard for mothers, because that's the question I get. And if it was me, I would be, I don't care where you go. I mean, that's as the maybe I would shut that down. Yeah. Possibly. I think it's a man thing, like in the sense that we're sort of jerks because we can compartmentalize and just shut off one part of the brain, because I know I went through that, and I don't underestimate if someone like this gentleman here, he's obvious that he has a strong personality. And I think that he would actually, I'd be worried about everyone else, not him living outside. Like, we underestimate how strong our kids can be because they come from us and we did it, and it was harder back then, Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, that's the problem in the West, because I see that in the Middle East, right? And I'm not saying no. And the thing is, the reason they're not streetwise is you do the test after the experience. No, the experience comes after the test. So the later it happens, the worse it's going to get. Yeah. If someone goes out and I'm not saying go out on the street. That's not what I'm saying, right? But for example, let's say you said, I'm not giving you any more dinner. You just get bread and water. Anything else is up to you. I'll make sure you have bread and water. And apart from that, you have to get everything else. I'm not getting you anything. That would be and I know they're going to hate me, because I would hate me if I was 16 and heard some old guy telling me that. Right? But that has to happen in some way or form, in some professional way. You got to find a way to say, this is what you get here. I will make sure you can breathe, but that's it. Other than that, you get nothing, right? And then if they move out, you say, I'll check on you once a day or something. But there has to be some cutting of that cord. Otherwise, I'm telling you now, my brother and others people, they'll turn 26, 27, and they will have the mental age of a 5-year-old. And it's a combination of the autism and the parenting style. Right? So in my case, I was very lucky that I had such a crap upbringing, in a sense. I had parents who loved me to bits, but they had no idea of any of this, right? So So everything that happened and the bashings, and I was 10, I got knocked unconscious by a 16-year-old, and I kept getting bashed at school constantly and pissed on and spat on and kicked, and lots of things that happened over. No, I wrote my first suicide note when I was 12. The teacher held it away from my mum for 6 months. So when she found out, she had him sacked. And I didn't know about this until a couple of years ago. I always wondered why he left the school. So that was my first suicide note. The second suicide note was in year 8. And Mr. Banbury saw it, and he actually was the one that asked me if he could read the baby book that I was reading. And I said, if you can see that far. That was that guy. So then he said, see me after class. But when I went there, he had all the popular kids around him, so I left. And then I would spend many years hurting myself, rubbing my face in barbed wire, trying to feel external pain to alleviate the pain that was on the inside. And there's a lot of things like that. I studied martial arts after getting bashed repeatedly, and then I became an extreme violent human being. Yes, they asked me to close my eyes and tell them everything that was in the room. Yes, correct. Correct, I don't like it. All the way up until year 12, I used to blow the touch off me if someone touched me. They wipe it off? So I'm not the only one. Oh, sorry. Okay. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's so cool. Yes.
But when you write those notes, did you mean them?
Yes.
That's how you really felt at that time.
Yeah, you will see it in the book that I constantly was begging to die. And the one thing that kept me alive was that, well, there were two things. One was I was afraid I'd go to hell because I was quite a strong Christian. And the other one was I was afraid that what would happen to my parents. And those two things kept me alive. But that only kept me alive till 25, when it became so much that I then went for the whole thing.
So what's rule number one? And they say, don't get dead, don't get dead. And that's always been rule number one. But I have a son that is popular.
Yeah. 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 Well, I normally say, if I see someone, I never say, you notice, I don't say they're autistic. I say he's one of the family. It's one of my family, yeah. One of my boys. Yeah. That's, yes. Yes. Definitely not wanting attention. Okay, sorry, let me clarify, because I've had that happen to me. After my last suicide, I had this piece of garbage say that, you just wanted attention, otherwise you would have been successful. I thought, well, next time I'll take you with me, BH. Anyway. Sorry, I got so upset. Anyway, yeah, so do you want this to be the last question, or? Okay. Attention in the sense that they don't want to die, but they feel like they have no other choice. That's the best way. It's a combination of not fitting in, but also that there's no way out, and of your hell, of the fact that people turn the lights on you when the light is too much of a stimulus. My father does that all the time. I've learned to compensate. I have earplugs that I keep with me all the time. So you'll see me on most of my scopes. I've got little earplugs in, or I wear sunglasses at home. My dad's like, "Why you wear sunglasses in the house?" So you learn to compensate. But that stuff is horrific. Someone saying, "Come down and have breakfast." The sound, it feels like you're in a haunted house with 3 dead ghosts screaming at high pitch. That's the. Is this the last question? I've oscillated with this answer ever since I left school. I've done volunteering to try and relive school, to see how people behave so I could get better at it. And I've always asked that question every year. And I've oscillated between the two. But I think the answer is both. They need to, number one, know that they're different, but not better or worse. They are different. They have unique gifts and unique disadvantages, and so they need to be taught separately, I guess, to learn certain things. But they also need to be with other humans, because we have to understand that we are all a family, and even though we live in different rooms, it's still the same tent. Yeah, I mean, for example, like for me, I learned, I could not learn at school, could not learn. Other students were so unbelievably stupid in my head, right? Or they go, my brain can't focus. You know, just so many different things that would happen. Questions, I forget my question. People would look at you, the noises, every single little noise. So for me to do my degree, I just read it online, put my earplugs in, read the thing online over 2 years and did it, right? So yeah, these are yes. So if I could do both, like for example, if I could go online and just put my earplugs in, learn, and then at lunchtime play handball and stuff. Like the kids banned me from playing handball because I was merciless in the way I played. I would deliberately take out people unaware of the social constructs. Like people wouldn't take out their friends; they'd bring their friends, and I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, I can see a weed, I'm going to take that bugger out, and then you know, and people are like, he's evil, he's cold. I'm like, I don't understand. We're trying to win. Yeah, that's right. One goal, exactly right. Yeah. All right. Well, that was I love the questions. Thank you to everybody for coming. And anything else? All right. I think we'll stop these. Going to see you later, everybody. Any other questions? We did it, huh? That was our second speech. You are welcome, my dear. Any other? I think I'll shut off the YouTube live. Need to celebrate the victories. You killed it. Well, you guys were there. I did it for you guys. Fantastic, great speech. Was wonderful, amazing. Was wonderful. Alrighty. All right. I think it's getting to my head, guys. Let's stop this broadcast.